Welcome back to another episode of Not Even D2, the podcast covering Division III sports through interviews with those involved in Division III. Before we start, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to follow the show. We greatly appreciate it. But today, bro, we got a legendary coach on the show. Coach Reilly spent the last 25 years in a head coaching role, so he just had a ton of history being around the game of basketball, and you could really tell from his basketball knowledge how that's impacted his life and his perspective overall.
Yeah, Coach Reilly, man, he's a great guy, man. Everyone that I've talked to about Coach Reilly, I have a couple of people that either played for him or know him kind of personally, and they just speak highly of him. And I could see it while during the interview. You know what I'm saying? Like he answered any question that we asked him. He went into detail with every answer that he gave. And he's just an all around good guy. Really, really appreciate Coach Reilly for hopping on the pod. And he also, was telling us to save his contact info to hit him up if we ever need any help or advice or just as a connection. So again, really good guy, and I'm happy we got him on the pod.
No, for real. I really appreciate Coach Reilly. He's just like a helping hand from the minute we reached out. He was willing to help us. So that's big on his part. And you can see just like the influence he has on other people's careers. We talk a lot about this with him. Like some of the people he's coached are now coaching the NBA, training NBA players, or owning their own businesses. So he really just has this certain impact on people that just allows people to grow and be successful.
Yeah, he definitely has had a great impact on all his players. He's had a couple of 1,000-point scorers. A lot of great talent has come through there. And, he's built up two different programs. Bates College, he was up there for some time. And obviously now he's at Wesleyan. And he built those programs into two powerhouses in the NESCAC. You know what I mean? So it's clear the impact that he has in the game of basketball and the overall Division III as a whole.
Yeah. He got a lot of respect from us. And one thing, like, every episode that we interview somebody, I gain a new perspective on life, taking bits and pieces from something a guest said or whatever. But especially in this interview, I was re-listening to it and I kind of downplayed this past season, and his response was just perfect. That like what I'm saying doesn't define what Wesleyan thinks about success. Like I was just looking at it from a wins and loss perspective, but Coach Reilly definitely just has his own like perspective, and he's not letting outsiders influence too much about how his program is run. And you can see that's really impacted how he's been able to inherit, losing programs and developed into powerhouses in the NESCAC. So definitely a good episode. We get into a lot with Coach Reilly, inheriting a three win team. How does he combat that? What the future of Wesleyan is like. And then we talk a lot about the players he's coached and what they're up to right now. So if you're looking for the history about some Division III basketball, this is also the episode for you as well. Right. So appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode, and let's get into the conversation with Joe. All right, we're here with Coach Reilly. How you feeling today?
Feeling good. Good to be here. Big fan of you guys. So thanks for the invitation.
For sure. Definitely excited for this episode. It's going to be a good one.
So we got the NBA playoffs tonight. My Thunder are about to play in a few hours. I'm excited, but I'm curious if you watch any of the NBA, and if so, who's your team to win it?
I do. I'm a big fan of the NBA. I have to admit, I don't get to watch too much during the Division III season, but I'm all in. And I grew up a Celtics fan, so I'm all in on the Celtics. They're really fun to watch, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them hopefully make a deep run. Also, I'm really dialed in with the Phoenix Suns. My former player, 3-year captain, Greg St. Jean, is the current assistant coach there. And
Phillips extra to grab.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And he's amazing. He invited me out to Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. I was heading out there for the Division I Final Four and went out there a few days early, and I shadowed him and caught a game and saw him work out a player and saw the practice facility. It was amazing. So I'm following the Suns. I hope they can fight back in the series, and also former Cardinal Jordan Sears with the Dallas Mavericks, and he wrapped up his first year as a head coach, which is amazing, of the G League, the Texas Legends. He hired one of my student assistants, Leo Klibanoff, was also on staff there. So the Mavericks are also holding a close place in my heart these days.
You got a good coaching tree.
Yeah, proud of those guys. They're doing great stuff.
Yeah. So a little bit more about personal life. What are you up to now that this semester is almost over and summer's ahead? Any vacations planned? Recruiting trips?
Well, I will have a busy recruiting schedule, and I run some youth camps too. So in the summer, so that's a lot of fun. I love sharing the game and helping young kids work on their craft. So I'm looking forward to that. Classes end here at Wesleyan 2 weeks from today, so I'm really trying to be present and be in the office as much as I can. As a Division III coach, I don't have access to work guys out this time of year, but I want to be present. The guys are in and out of the gym all day, and I have a great location here in my office where guys come in the facility are always stopping and saying hello. So I'm as present as I can here, and no big vacations yet, but I got some college tuition bills to pay, so I think we're going to be staying local this summer.
And you said you mentioned to us that your daughter plays lacrosse at Swarthmore too, right?
Yes, yeah. So my daughter.
Do you have any games to go to or no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I've been able to see her play live a couple times already this year, and I'm making a road trip on Saturday. My oldest son Joey hasn't seen his sister Carly play yet live, and we all watched the live stream. But so we're gonna do not the entire family, but me and my son Johnny and my son Joey and my wife will go down and watch Carly play. And my daughter, actually, Lena, she's at Villanova as a student, so she's in the Philly area. So we won't be road tripping together, but we will be all hanging out. I know they'll hit Dad up for a meal, definitely, and that'll be the highlight of the trip.
I'm curious, what kind of fan are you in the stands? Are you a big yeller, or are you just sitting there watching?
I'm sitting there watching. I'm very, very, very calm and collected. So, and that's in all sports. And I think as a coach, I have a great perspective. My daughter Carly, I've seen her. I've driven to Philadelphia, and she hasn't gotten to a game as a freshman, which it's hard to play as a freshman. But recently she moved to the starting lineup, and my demeanor's the same. And win or lose, I like to go up to the coach and tell them they did a great job, and I like to thank them for providing a great experience for my daughter or my son, because it's really a privilege to be in college athletics. And I think as a coach myself, I have that perspective that it is, it's a real blessing and to be part of a program, and the coach has a lot to do with where you end up at school, particularly at a place like Swarthmore. So I'm really full of gratitude when I see any of my kids play.
Nice. So let's get right into it, man. We have a lot of good questions on the horizon. First question that I wanted to ask you, we read online that your family has deep roots in Connecticut. Your father was a legendary coach in Connecticut, well-respected, 35 plus years of coaching, won over 500 games, 5 state titles. Also, your uncle too, his brother was a well-respected coach. So just talk about that environment growing up in Connecticut with, your dad, your uncle, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I feel really blessed to be part of a basketball family. So my father had a great career at South Catholic High School. He was there for 27 years. He won 5 state championships and won over 500 games. My brother and I had the privilege to play for him in high school, which was great. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2005. So, we felt like it was definitely a little too early than we were all hoping for growing up, but we really cherished our time together with him. And his younger brother, Gene Reilly, coached at Portland High School in Portland, Connecticut. And he won over 500 games and won the state championship. So there weren't many nights growing up that it wasn't basketball on TV, or we were going to a game live and watching them play. So it was great. My parents made a big effort to make sure that we were really well rounded. They gave some restrictions of how many games. They didn't want us to go to games at one point I could pick one game a week to go to, and I would stay, and weeknights I'd be doing my homework. And I think their strategy backfired because it made me just want it even more. I always wanted to be in the gym, and I was that gym rat who was at practice all the time when I could. And I'm sure I was being a little bit of a pain to the players there, but they took good care of me.
Everybody has like their own philosophy on being a dad and being a coach at the same time. So your dad's obviously a well-respected coach. You're growing up and you're a well-respected player in the Connecticut area. So what was that dynamic of like him trying to coach you, but also being your father? Talk to me about the relationship you had with your father.
So that's a great question. We had a great relationship growing up, and he had the philosophy that he did never forced us to play. He never forced us to train. He was a very engaged father and spent a lot of time with us. But when it came to athletics, it was we as kids were driving we're driving the request of what we're going to do. He really valued playing multiple sports, and so growing up, I played tennis, I played soccer, obviously played basketball, played a lot of baseball, and just and played outside all the time, bikes. And he just really allowed us to be kids. And what part of his model was he didn't want to be at every game, and he didn't want to coach us during the games. So, he felt there was a lot of value. I'd come home from a game and he wouldn't be there, and he'd want to hear my version of how the game went, rather than he would go as a from a 40-year-old perspective of what the game was like. And I took that a lot with my kids. And so obviously I wanted to be present as much as I could, but it was okay if I wasn't there, sometimes by design, sometimes because I couldn't be there because of the demands of being a college basketball coach. But, I think you got to allow kids to be kids, and as a college basketball coach, like, I'm really demanding on my players, but you got to remember, I can't treat my 12-year-old son the same way I'm treating a 20-year-old, grown man who's a junior in college. So, but I had a very good model. My dad was a very good father, and he was a real good model for me.
I want to hear a little bit about how much of your dynamic with your father influenced your relationship with your 4 kids. Like, can you talk about that and how, like, how they're now older, and Joey's just finished up at Sacred Heart. You just talked about your daughter playing across at Swarthmore. So how has that evolved?
One thing that he really emphasizes is that all of us had to run our own race. And as the father of 4, I realized that all my kids are so different, but the 4 of them went to 3 different high schools because we wanted to find a fit that was really, really good for them. And we gave them a lot of power to decide of where they'd like to go to school. Obviously we gave them some choices, but we wanted them to, we had to say, like, be the CEO of their own journey. And so I think that was one real valuable lesson. The other valuable lesson was you like, if I wanted to be a great basketball player, my father could only do so much for me. It has to come from within. So he did a real good job of doing that. I like to tell this one story that I think I was in 6th grade, and I was playing in a basketball game, and he was in the stands with a notebook. And at the end of the game, another dad went up to him and wanted to know what type of notes he was taking about my game, so he could do the same for his son. And my father looked at him and said, I wasn't taking any notes on my son. I was doing my practice plan because I'm right in the middle of my season, and time is, I didn't have a lot of time. So, and I think that really in a nutshell, it's how my dad approached it. Like, he really wanted the best for us, but we were gonna do it ourselves. And I'd like to think that I took that to heart.
Yeah, that's a great parenting style. Shout out to your father. Rest in peace to him. Sorry for your loss. Talking more about your playing career, I mentioned that you were a well-respected player. You actually committed to a NESCAC school in Trinity back in the day. You scored 1,113 points as a small guard, so kudos to you. And you're also 8th in total assists in Trinity history with 367 assists. So you had a great career yourself. I'm curious, how would you describe your game, and talk a little about your time at Trinity?
My time at Trinity was great. It was really life changing. So my mom never went to college, and my dad was in the Marine Corps, and then he got out and went to he went to night school and ended up graduating from college. So the on campus experience was something that I knew nothing about. And Trinity's obviously a great school and had a great education, and it was really life changing. I learned a lot. The curriculum was rigorous. I was exposed to a lot of different things academically that I had never thought about before. It was great. I met people from all over the country and all over the world, and it was great. And basketball wise, it was a lot of fun. I played with a lot of great players, and we had some really good teams. One year in particular, we were really good. We won the ECAC tournament. At that point, NESCAC schools weren't allowed to go to the NCAA tournament, so we went as far as we could. I think looking back, I wish we had a chance to go in the NCAA tournament because I think we could have made a run. But it was great. And I don't remember a lot of the games. I mean, I remember the big ones, but I do remember the big personalities and the great people that I got to spend a lot of time with. And when I look at my team and the dynamics in the locker room, and I mean, I still talk to guys from Trinity that I went to school over 30 years ago, and like we talk all the time, and it's a lot of fun. And I see that brewing amongst the guys on my team, and I see it for the guys that I've coached already, both at Bates and at Wesleyan.
So I wanted to hear a little bit more about this. You obviously scored 1,000 points and you're top 10 in assists in Trinity. So what was your play style like? Like, who was your player comparison? Like, talk about that.
Yeah, that's, man. Well, I'll tell you who I idolized growing. I idolized growing up. So the college level, like watching Billy Donovan play at Providence College, like I thought that was amazing. Watching him, and I was a big fan. But in a modern day, I don't know, man. The players are so good. If I could go back in time, I would say that I should have spent more time playing defense. I could really pass the ball, and I love to score and win. But man, I think that my coach should have got into me a little bit more about keeping people in front. Now I played with some great shot blockers. There was a kid named Michael Stubbs. I think he led the country in rebounding, and he was unbelievable. So I had some good teammates that made me look real good.
I wouldn't say you were bad at defense. I also saw you average a steal a game in one of your seasons. So, I mean, a steal a game is big time.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you what, but the standard that I have with my guys guarding, I don't know if I want my former players to get a clip of but I would like to say that I was gritty. It was good. There's some VHS tapes out there, I think.
Yeah. I want to circle back a little bit. So you went to Trinity, you're a graduate from there, and now you're coaching in the NESCAC at a different school. And Trinity just had a great run to the Final Four of the D3 tournament. So how are your feelings? Like, do you support your alma mater, or is it like no, that's my rival, I'm not rooting for them when they get to the tournament?
When it gets to the NCAA tournament, I think it's great for the NESCAC to have teams advance. And we had 3 teams in the Sweet 16 this year, and obviously Trinity went to the Final Four. I think it's great that they got back there. They were a very well coached team this year, and they had high level players who played consistently at a high level, and I think it's great in the league. When I took over the program with the Wesleyan program in 08-09, I 4 out of the previous 6 seasons when I was the head coach here, there was a NESCAC team in the Final Four, and there were 2 national champions. Wow. Williams won in 03. Amherst won in 07, and both those programs lost in the championship game. So I'm excited that someone was back in the Final Four, and I give them a lot of credit. Yeah, it stirs up emotions. I had a great time at Trinity, and I have a lot of great friends there. But I was at 4 years at Trinity. At Trinity, I was 11 years at Bates College. So I like to say, like, I left my junior year after my junior year on my 3rd tour of duty. So, when you spend 11 years at something, all 4 of my kids were born in Maine. So that's another gym I walk into, and that stirs up a lot of emotions, actually more than Trinity. It was more recent, but hats off to Trinity. They did a great job. And a fun fact, I've known Coach Cosgrove a long time. In the 91-92 season, he coached my younger brother. He was an assistant coach at the University of Hartford, and I actually watched him play high school basketball. He was a very good high school basketball player. So our connection and relationship goes way back.
Yeah. Before we continue, I need you to settle something. I mean, you talked about the NESCAC, the success that they've had, and me and Ruda have different opinions. What is your perception on the NESCAC ranked amongst other top conferences around the country in Division III?
Well, it's a heavy Northeast influence because we've played out of region teams, but that's the one thing about Division III is that it's like, you watch games online and it's a different feel than watching in person. But I think that year in and year out, if you're looking over the span of the last 25 years or 27 years that I've been in Division III, I think that NESCAC is right up there in the top. And I say if you're going to say that it's not the top because there are a lot of great conferences out there, like we're right up there. We might be, and I do think it fluctuates. I do think it fluctuates a little bit, but I'm a NESCAC guy. I played there and I've coached there for a while. I got to say the NESCAC, don't I?
Sure, for sure. I want to hear a little bit more about this parity that you're talking about. Obviously, over the last couple of years, I feel that there's been an influx of really good players into Division III because of the COVID-19 pandemic, not really allowing some players to get scholarships that might deserve it. So just talk a little bit about that, how the parity of D3 has changed and the evolution of D3 over the last 27 years that you've been in the game.
Yeah, I think that the level of player and the level of coaching just keeps getting better and better every year that I've been in Division III. And even before COVID, I think that was the case. But I think that it's more exponential now that student athletes have an extra year, and it's just so much more accessible. I think people are more aware of how great Division III basketball is, and players are aware of their options, and now grad students and medical red shirts. There's just so many opportunities. So I think that it's at an all-time high. And the one thing that I think has really changed is that I think looking back, even when I played, I think the top teams were as good as the top teams now, or at least close. It's hard to compare era to era. But I think the main change is that I just think across the board, like the floor has risen so much. I think everybody has players and everybody's working at it. Full-time coaches and players who are dedicated, and there's just a lot more resources available for players too.
So I want to hear just, what made you get started into coaching? Obviously, you finished up your career at Trinity. And then we read online that you started coaching at Yale a little bit too, right after you graduated, and you also went to Rhode Island too. So what made you want to get started into that?
So as a son of a basketball coach, I always had it in the back of my mind I wanted to coach. I was an economics major. I did the finance internship going into my senior year, and I liked it. I didn't love it. I had a really nice job offer going into my senior year to sign and work at Life and Casualty in Hartford, Connecticut. And it just didn't feel right. My mother was putting a little pressure on me to do it and, get the check coming in and pay the bills. But I turned it down, and I was really wavering what I wanted to do. And I remember having a great conversation with my dad. We went out for a coffee, and he just point blank looked at me and said, "Hey, you're telling me like you feel pressure that you want to go into business because of your economics degree and your Trinity education, but people are telling you, maybe don't do coaching just because of what your dad did." And he just looked at me and he goes, "Well, you're telling me what everyone else is thinking." He goes, "Well, look, like just tell me exactly what you want to do." And I said, "I think I really want to coach, but I don't want to coach just because I that's what you do and it's what I'm comfortable with and what I know." So we made an agreement that I was going to try the business world in the area of sport. So I worked at a nonprofit that was promoting peace through sport. I actually never got on an airplane until I was 19 years old at Trinity. And then I worked for this nonprofit, and I flew over I got my passport and flew over to Ireland and helped them do some programming in Belfast that was bringing together Catholic kids and Protestant kids. There was a lot of political conflict there, and did some fundraising. But I'm at the University of Rhode Island, and every day at lunch, I'm going to play pickup basketball at URI, because we were right near URI. So I wouldn't take my lunch to eat. I'd take my lunch and play pickup hoops. And Al Skinner was the coach then. He's playing pickup hoops. Bill Cohen was playing pickup hoops. He's the current coach at Northeastern. Tim O'Shea just retired as the coach of Bryant a couple of years ago. He was on staff there, and I'm playing with those guys. And one of the assistant athletic directors I got friendly with said, "Hey, you want to be a GA and you can work in the athletic department at URI and get your master's for free." So I said, that sounds like a great idea. So I worked for the athletic director at URI and did some marketing and worked with club sports and intramurals and received my MBA. They paid for it. And I didn't do any coaching, but I was looking through the window and I said, I'm going to coach. And I made a list of about 30 different coaches that I knew in New England, and I wrote them a handwritten note, and then I followed up with a phone call, and I got in my car, which wasn't very nice, and drove around and met with everyone who would meet with me and said, what would you do if you were me trying to get into college coaching? And I came up empty, and then I went back and played pickup, and Tim O'Shea, we're all sweaty. We had a great run, and he asked how things were going and what I wanted to do. And he was right there, and I hadn't even talked to him about it. He goes, "Hey, there's a job open at Yale. I used to coach there." He's like, "Come on up." And he had it was the phone that you had the cord on it and the touch tone phone, and he calls up. The coach was there at the desk, and he says, "Hey, I got a guy who would be willing to volunteer for you for a year at Yale if you have that spot still open." And he gave me a good reference, and I went down and interviewed, and I landed a job at Yale University. It was amazing. I was really fortunate and blessed for that to happen. But
yeah, that's dope. That's really dope. So you got that job. You spent 3 years at Yale being an assistant coach. So I'm curious, what was that time like? What did you learn? How was the teams back then? And then also, what were the main differences you noticed when you took that jump from assistant to head coach, D1 assistant to D3 head coach? So what were the differences in the level of play and the type of play?
Yeah, so it was 3 seasons at Yale. The first year, this has since changed, that you'd have 2 full-time assistants, but your third assistant was a volunteer. So I volunteered that first year, and I told myself I was going to be all in. I was going to try to be the first one in the office and the last one to leave, and just really enjoy it. I remember hopped on a plane and flew out to Gonzaga for my first game. I'm an assistant coach, and I'm at Yale Gonzaga. It's like, and I pinching myself thinking, this is unbelievable. It was really hard to be the first one in the office and the last one out, because the other 2 assistants, it was Steve Peichel, who's now the head coach of Rutgers. And he's a worker. It's hard to beat him in the office, because he really to this day has a superior work ethic. And there was another coach, a great guy named Mike Mucci, who left Yale and became the head coach of Haverford outside of Philly. And then my last 2 years, it was me and James Jones from Yale University. We were assistants together, and James is still a really good friend. So I learned a lot. We coached with the head coach was Dick Kuchin. He was with Digger Phelps at Notre Dame and was with Lute Olson before Lute Olson was at Arizona. He was with Lute Olson at Iowa. Yeah, and I learned a lot. And it was back then, I think Steve Peichel played at UConn, and I think the Yale experience was it was definitely a big step up from Trinity. But I do think Yale was a little bit closer to Trinity back then than it was to like the UConn experience in the Big East. But I've been just really impressed with like the Ivy League right now. It's at such a high level. It's a mid-major program, and I think that back in I think it just turned, like I was in the mid-90s, and I think it just turned after that. And then huge adjustment being a head coach. It was a huge adjustment. you go from being a college athlete, and man, I had all the answers when I played. I feel like I knew a lot, and then you get pretty humble pretty quick when you're assistant, and then you're a head coach, and every decision is on you. And the first couple of years were pretty lean years up at Bates College. So we took our share of some beatings, but we were able to. I was really proud of that. We really turned it around up there, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of that first recruiting class that really believed in my vision as a young coach. That was a special group.
I want to hear a little bit more about that. You inherited and built up 2 different programs in the NESCAC, and Bates was a winning program when you were there, and they still have one since you've left. And now Wesleyan is obviously a great program in the NESCAC now. So, what do the early days of building culture look like?
It was fun to have a reset and do it again. So when I arrived at Bates College, it was a very unique situation. It was 1997, and I was the 5th head coach in the 90s. So there was no continuity. There was and when you make that many coaching changes, it's just there's empty recruiting classes because there's no head coach, there's no coach in the seat to bring in a class. So my first season at Bates, we went 3-21, and we were 2 shots away from being 1-23. Because the two of our wins, like there's a shot in the air, and I'm sitting there saying, man, if if it goes in, we're done. There was a shot in the air to beat us. But I got a real good group of guys that believed in me and turned down some other good opportunities to join me at Bates. And ironically enough, I had in my first recruiting class at Bates, I really invested in the younger guys, and I had 3,000 point scorers. And then when I went to Wesleyan, I really invested in that first recruiting class. And for the second time, my first recruiting class, there were 3,000 point scorers. So it's kind of unique. I think the main difference is the second time around, I really valued the players that I inherited, and not that I didn't value them at Bates, but it gave me the perspective of that is that, like, it's Division III. You can't bring in transfers. You're going to have to build it, and it's going to take some time. And rather than be stressed about it, you should enjoy it, and you should really embrace the guys who are already in the program. Like when I came to Wesleyan, there was a coach who left. Then he left late, so there was an interim coach, and then it was me. So I had seniors. I was their 3rd coach in 3 years, and it was my responsibility to give them a good experience. And as I was in not just throw them to the side and say, I'm going to get new players. So I think I valued them a lot more. And I also had a belief that I could do it because I did it once. I have to admit, there were times at Bates, I'm like, man, like, can we really do it here? This is in the NESCAC, and man, this is a big mountain to climb.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm curious a little bit more about that first year. You go 3-21. What is that? How do you sell kind of to recruits? Like, trust me, we're gonna be on our way up. And also, you talked about how there was 5 coaches already in 7 years. So were there any thoughts in your head like I might be the next one out?
Well, no, it was really an interesting situation if anyone's listening to this podcast that was following the NESCAC back then. There was a guy named Rick Boyages who took a sabbatical from Bates and went to be an assistant at Boston College, and then Boston College with Jim O'Brien had this great season, so he ended up not coming back. But then his interim coach had a great season, but he wasn't retained. Then they brought in someone else, and it didn't work out. But no one really got fired. It was just they left it. The last guy I replaced was Jeff Brown, who's a real good friend of mine, and he's coaching at Middlebury. He's been there for 27 years. So, and Jeff Brown's is a real good friend. He's a great coach, a great person. And so it wasn't that it was just a real wonky situation. It was just a crazy set of circumstances.
Yeah. So the early days might have not been that pretty at Bates, but it wasn't always ugly. You know, you done some accomplished things at Bates. One year in 2005, you won Coach of the Year. In your last 6 seasons at Bates, you had over a 70% win percentage. So kudos to you. And throughout the year, you won Maine Basketball Coach of the Year 3 times. So what went into the decision to leave Bates after 11 seasons and move into the NESCAC?
Yeah, it's. I was really happy at Bates, and I coached. Those wins. I was really proud of the culture that we created there, and it's really hard to win in the NESCAC. And when I arrived at Bates, the interim coach who was there, and I might have the year wrong, but I think it was 92. They won 18 games, and that's the most games that they've ever won in a season at Bates. And then in my last 6 seasons at Bates, we averaged over 18 wins, and I was really proud of that, because
Yeah.
it's hard. It was really hard to do, but it took a lot of hard work. I had great assistant coaches helping me out, and when you hit on the right guys, Bates is a real special place, and I got some great players from a lot of different places. So, and Maine's such a big state. I had a great player named Zach Ray and he was from Bangor, but from Lewiston, I could drive to Boston just as quickly as I could to get up to Bangor. They're like, "Oh, you got a local kid." I'm like, "No, I don't. I mean, if I drive 2 hours south, I'm in Boston, but I drive 2 hours north, I'm in Bangor watching Zach Ray play." So, I think that had a lot to do with it. But to answer your question, I was set. I was set to stay up there. I was really happy, and my wife was really happy. And Maine is a great place to raise a family. And when Wesleyan opened up, they reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in the job, and I said yes. And I grew up in Connecticut. At the time, my father had passed away, but my mother was still alive, and my wife's family, her mom and dad are both in their 90s, but they're still alive. And I had the opportunity to come back to family was a big draw. But when I was offered the job at Wesleyan, I still wasn't convinced. It wasn't like automatic. And I remember my mother being a little upset with me because I got offered the job and I still had some questions. I'm like, "Well, Mom, it's not automatic that I'm going to leave Bates because it's such a special place." But I eventually did leave, and it's been a great move. And one thing that was really special about the move is that one of my former players and former assistants, John Furbush, was able to get the job at Bates, and he's still there, and he's a great coach. He's even a better man. He's a great dad, and so I still feel connected to the program a little bit. And so when you put your heart and soul into a place and you build something special, it really meant a lot to me that it was kind of handed over to a guy that was a great player for me and loves Bates just as much as I did. And he's been there for 16 years. So that was a real blessing for me. It made it a little bit easier to leave, but hard to leave the players. It was having that conversation, telling the players that you're leaving, and not only that you're leaving, but you're going to a rival school in the NESCAC. That wasn't a fun conversation. And it was one that had to be done. And I still have a great relationship with some guys that I coached at Bates, but that was tough.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I want to talk about that. In my opinion, if my coach left and went to a school like Utica to coach or Fisher, it wouldn't be like all joyful when I see him. It's like, nah, you left us. It's not the same relationship. So did you notice any like hard feelings from the players at Bates when you like that first season when you're at Wesleyan playing against them?
No, I didn't notice it, and I think one reason why is because like the leadership of John Furbush. Like, we were great friends. I was at his wedding. When he comes down and recruits to this area, he stayed at my house, and so. But I mean, it's natural. I mean, that year moved. So the year that I started at Wesleyan and I inherited a team, and we had some good players. but we didn't have a ton of depth, and there wasn't a real tradition of winning. I think that the year before I got there, they won 8 games, and the year before that, they had won 7 games. And my first year at Wesleyan, we only won 7 games, but 3 of the wins we beat Bates, and Bates came down here, and they wanted to kick our butts, and my guys really responded, and we beat Bates. And then, Trinity, you mentioned, I went there, and that's an emotional game for me. We went over to Trinity, and they were only won 7, and they were really good. And man, our guys played fantastic, and we beat them. And then when I was at Bates, we had some close calls with Amherst, but we never beat Amherst. They beat Bates. We got all the way to the NESCAC championship game. I think we lost by 6. We lost at the buzzer another time. There were plenty of times they really kicked our can. But the first time I played Amherst, and I mean, awesome. They had awesome personnel, and Coach Hickson's a legend. He can really coach. And they were ranked 5th in the country, and we beat them the first time we played them. So we only won 7, and I think that was because of my maturity as a coach. Because I just really embraced those guys. I think we had a real fun time, being together. And even though we didn't win a lot of games, I think they thought they didn't always like my style, I'm sure, and how hard I was making them work. But I think it was refreshing to know that someone was in there really cared about them, and they knew I was going to be there for a while. It's hard to play for an interim coach. That's really hard.
Yeah. So I want to hear just about that first recruiting class at Wesleyan. That first recruiting class, you can argue that they had probably the most significant impact of any of the classes throughout Wes's history. And I want to talk about one of the alumni in that class, but I'll ask you about them after I ask this question. But what did you notice about that first recruiting class? Like, what was so special about them?
I think that they really. So I think and this happens at Division III. So we graduated 5. So 5 guys went all the way through, but there are a few more than that. And for whatever reason, at Division III, I like to tell people when they come through my office in the recruiting process, like at Division III, I think there's a big difference between someone quitting. And in my definition of quitting, it's like in the middle of the season, and someone comes into your office and throws their uniform on your desk and says, "I'm out of here." Like that's my definition of quitting at the Division III level. But I do think that at the Division III level, particularly a place like Wesleyan in Bates, is that guys at the end of the season will make an educated decision, like to not play the next year, and that's always an option. If you're a scholarship player and you decide you're not playing, well, that's depending on where you're going to school, that's a $60,000 decision, or maybe a lot more, maybe a little less. So of these guys coming in, so we had a couple guys for a variety of reasons that didn't finish out their career, and sometimes it's, hey, you get over recruited, or you want to go study abroad, or you maybe want to graduate early, or there's just some other extracurricular activities that you're into. But the overall recruiting class was very representative of Wesleyan. Wesleyan is a very diverse place, and I define the diversity in so many different ways, but like socioeconomic, the region of where you grow up in, religious diversity, ethnic diversity, and diversity of interest. And I look at, like, one guy's a doctor, one guy's in marketing, another guy, we got a few guys that are still in basketball, but it's really fun when basketball brings together people, and it's the common thread, and it's fun. Wesleyan is the exact opposite of a cookie cutter school. Like, everybody, and that's why I think Wesleyan is such a cool place, because Wesleyan is a place that you can really be yourself, and pursue your own interests, and you can be you in a space, but you're also, and basketball brings people together. So that's really cool. And so the class really is representative of into the social scene at Wesleyan and into the academic scene. So it was great, but a real special group.
So I want to ask about one guy in particular, Greg St. Jean. He went to Phillips Exeter, and he played for Coach Tilton, who I admire. Coach Tilton's a great coach, a Phillips Exeter winning coach. And then he went to Wesleyan, obviously, and graduated with you. And, I want to work in the player development field and potentially work for the pros one day. And Greg is a D3 guy working in the pros. And I just wanted to hear, like, your perspective on him and, like, how he got to where he is today, just as someone who wants to get in that field.
Yeah. So Greg he's a dear friend, and he is so, I'll just say this, like, he is so generous. Like, if he goes so far out of his way to mentor and connect with the guys in our program who have an interest in a path like that you have. Like his generous and giving spirit is inspiring to me. So I would say that about him. I've also never met, I haven't had a player who loves basketball more than Greg St. Jean. Now, I'm saying there could be guys that could be a tie at the top. And I'm thinking of some names that it's tied at the top. But nobody loves the game and wants to put in more time into the game and into his craft of being a basketball guy and than Greg St. Jean. So Greg came in here. I drove up to, so I recruited him while I first knew of him when he was in California. I recruited him at Bates. And then he decided to go to Exeter. So I kept him on my list, and I had a relationship with him. And then I continued to recruit him. He unfortunately had a ton of injuries when he was here and didn't play in a lot of games. And he had some injuries at Exeter. In the first game that he played, it was at Kimball Union.
Alma mater.
I know. So it was at Kimball Union, and I had an assistant coach, Jim Shepard, and I said, Jim, you're driving to watch him play because I've been dying to watch him play, and I want this guy. It was midweek, most likely it was snowing, and Jim Shepard went up there and watched him play, and he came back and said, Coach, we have to get this guy. He's diving on the floor. He's talking. He's just the cornerstone you can really build off him, and. And when it was a great day when he decided to come to Wesleyan. He was a 3-year captain for me. Mm-hmm. And in the games that he did play in, I mean, I think he had 3 major surgeries while he was here, but he in one game he picked up 4 charges on the same exact player.
Great.
Like guarding the best player. And he was super intense. And there might be guys who was a good leader as a student athlete here at Wesleyan, but no one better. Yeah. It's going to be like tie. It'll be a tie for first. So I'm glad you brought his name up. And as I told you before, I was in Phoenix shadowing him, and what he's doing in the NBA is amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, he was with the Lakers. Now he's with the Suns. Like, I saw him on TV last night, and I hear about him through different Exeter alumni, and I just wanted to ask you about him. But I want to talk about one of your other players, a very special player who's now playing in the G League, Sam Peak. We had Sam Peak on the pod. Really appreciate him for hopping on. I mean, he hopped on when we really didn't have anyone yet. He really helped us out. But talk about Sam and like what was different about him. What made Sam so different from every other player that you maybe coached.
Yeah, Sam's my guy. I love Sam. He's great. And I listened to he did a great job on your podcast. That's when I first heard of your podcast. So, we're super proud of Sam. And, coming out of, he was a big time recruit for us. It was a really good get for us. He had a lot of Division I interests, and he did have a few Division I offers, but, and he comes from a great family. And he values the education. He had a great visit here, and he came to Wesleyan. And his freshman year. So I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but he played early his freshman year. So he wasn't playing extensive minutes, but he was playing. He was checking into games, and we really believed him. And we didn't win as many games that year as that we wanted to, but we had some really good players in the program. We had Austin Hutcherson, who's arguably the best player he left after his sophomore year, went to Illinois on a full scholarship, was offered by Marquette, Creighton, Notre Dame, and South Bend. And so Sam was behind him. And there's a kid, Jordan Bonner from Texas, who was an all-conference player, defensive player of the year. Like, we had some at his position. We had some really good players, and then so he played a little bit. Then there was a stretch where he didn't play. He didn't check in some game. He got some DNPs, and but we never gave up on him. We were following him, and my assistant coaches were after every practice we're meeting, and he never stopped working. He never came once in my office to complain. And he was the first one in and the last one out. He was always asking for extra reps. And my assistant coaches, that we had a smaller roster that year. And towards the end of the year, you kind of dial it back because you're saving legs. But I had assistant coaches who would love to play. So they were playing some 3-on-3 at the end of practice just to get the guys some extra run. And they're like, man, like, just in the last 2 weeks, coach, he's taken off. And so I put him back into the lineup. And then the last weekend, I think he's killing it, and he's playing. And you have to have a lot of faith and security as a coach, because you put a guy in late in the season and he starts performing, and people are like, "What the hell are you doing, coach? Like, why is this guy not playing?" Yeah. But I think it was a progression that Sam had to go through, and then the jump that he made that spring and that summer, like, so he went, like, he played like 30, it felt like he was playing 39 minutes a game. And so I went from like apologizing and saying, "Hey, Sam, sorry. Man, I probably should have played you more," to the next year, "Sam, I'm sorry, I can't take you out of the game. I'm playing you too much. Like, you're not getting enough rest." Like, it's, but like, a lot of guys would have, I think in that situation, a lot of guys would have made excuses, would have sulked, would have quit. Family would have been calling. But Sam he just was like this. He was just like, hey, he knew what he had to do, put the work in. And when I watch him now in the G League, like, the jump that he's made just this year is incredible. He's an A+ person, number one. He is so likable. When he's a first team All-American on our team and he's our guy, it makes my life so easy when he's the hardest worker, and he's so respected by his teammates, and he's just genuinely an A+ person and a great guy. Like, as a coach, it's like, where do I sign up for this? Like, for the basketball guys out there, and it really hasn't happened to me, but you hear it sometimes, like, the All-American and the leading scorer is like, it's not really well liked in the locker room, or it's a little bit of a roller coaster. Everyone's appeasing him. Sam was not that guy. And I think the adversity that Sam went through here, like, it just really made his mindset. Like, even this year, like, to get cut by the Herd, but then he's picked up by Detroit, and then it's a roller coaster. And you're in the G League, and the two-way guys come in, and your minutes step, and then they leave, and you're back, and you're in the starting lineup. Like, he is just so steady and even. Like, he's got a great career ahead of him, and I'm so proud of him. Proud of him.
Great words from you, Coach. I think something that's really dope that you just said is you were kind of like, you admired his work ethic, but it was also, he mentioned in the episode, like, he admired your work ethic. Yep. So I really respect how you guys it seems like you guys kind of inspired each other to be the best people. So that's a lot of respect. One thing, we got one more question before we head to break. Obviously, you coached at Bates, and now you're at Wesleyan. They're in two completely different locations. One is in Maine, Wesleyan's, and Connecticut. So I'm wondering, what's like some of the things you can promote at Wesleyan that you couldn't promote at Bates, or like, how does your recruiting style change being at the different schools?
I think there are more similarities than differences, just because both are really high academic institutions that you're really selling that the 4-year education is going to set up your next 40 years, and the intimate, small classroom setting, a real diverse selection of courses, and a really engaged campus community. So there are a lot of similarities. When I first arrived at Wesleyan, a couple of things that really stood out is that Wesleyan is just a lot more accessible. Is that it's just easier. It's easier to get to. Like,
Maine is up there. Like, Maine is definitely out of the way.
It is, and so I like, but the one thing I had to like if someone went and visited you at Bates, they were really interested.
Mm.
And that made recruiting a little bit easier because you knew they were really interested. And when I got to Wesleyan, it was very convenient for a lot of people in like the tri-state area in Boston, or sometimes it would be a drive-by, like, hey, if you're coming from the South, we're the furthest, we're the most southern school in the NESCAC. So you kind of drive by our exit. So like, are you really interested, or are you just kind of double dipping and you're going to, spend a half hour here? So it took me a while to, because, just because you visit at Wesleyan doesn't mean you're super interested, where I think if you visit at Bates, you're interested. And I think, and also once guys get into season, players can get to our games a little, like we recruit nationally. So I'm only talking about the guys that are local, but a guy from New York City can come and watch a game. But at Bates, it was, unless you were a kid from Maine, it's hard to, if you have a day on Saturday, you're not going to, hop on a flight to get up to Maine or drive the 6 hours from New York City or 7 hours from New York City. So I think that's one of the biggest differences. And the facilities here at Wesleyan are really great, are really top notch. We're blessed with some great facilities. And Bates has some great facilities too, but they're certainly different because it's unique. Because Alumni Gym is a real fun place to play, but it's certainly different than our gym. So and I think no matter where you are as a recruiter, it's really about the people. I always say like when a real good recruit walks through my door, like a real good recruit talks to any coach, like a coach shouldn't be the coach if they don't really believe in their program and believe that what they're doing is really great. But I really want my recruits to talk to the players in the program when I'm not around, because that's the play. It's about the people, and it's about the players, and it's about your teammates. You guys are both athletes. There's no one on campus that you're spending more time with than your teammates in those 4 years. It's really important.
Yeah, that's great insight. I appreciate that. But stay with us. We're going to take a quick break and then talk about the future of Wesleyan and a little rapid fire and starting five edition. All right, we're back. Over the break, I was looking at that first class that you inherited at Wesleyan, and there's a lot of guys besides the Greg St. Jean guys. So was there anybody else that was really special to that class?
Yeah, so I mentioned there were five recruits, and as one of the things that I really try to identify when I recruit student athletes is it's really important to me that guys love basketball. And because of that, a lot of guys pursue a career within basketball. So of those five, we talked about Greg St. Jean, and he's doing amazing things. There was a player from Florida, Matt Hogan. He was already through his residency. He's got a family, and he's a doctor. And then Derek Beresford, he was one of the other 1,000-point scorers. He was in the marketing world. He worked with the Brooklyn Nets, and then he transitioned to another great business. And he's a great family man. His wife is wonderful from Wesleyan. I was at their wedding. It was fantastic, and he's doing great things. There was Mike Callahan. He spent 3 years in Europe. He started in Ireland and led the league in scoring and rebounding, and then finished off 2 years playing in Spain. He had an amazing career, and then we can't forget certainly about Shasha Brown. He was, from a player standpoint, he really helped the trajectory of Wesleyan men's basketball. He's the all-time leading scorer in Wesleyan history, and when he was a freshman, he was NESCAC Rookie of the Year, and he was so fast and so talented. I mean, more than once the referee kind of whispers to me in the middle of the game, is like, "How'd you get that guy to come here?" That's how good he was. I mean, he was turning heads, and another great person, and he's had a great basketball journey. Where I'm not going to mention all his stops, but he was at VCU with Shaka Smart, and he was at Vanderbilt with Jerry Stackhouse, and LIU with Rod Strickland, and at the NBA headquarters in New York City for a while, and now he's at Cal Berkeley. So he's doing amazing things. So those guys really believed in my vision, and I owe them a lot. Think about those guys all the time.
I think another thing that I really think is cool about you as a coach is you care about these guys outside of basketball, and that's not something you get from a lot of coaches, is the love as people. So I really commend you for the love you have for your players, and also how you keep up with them post college. So respect to you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It is. I have to admit, it's a little bit easier to stay in touch with the guys that are in the world of basketball, because we're kind of on the same calendar and on the same rhythm. But they're guys that are in so many different spaces. Whether they've gone to law school, they're on Wall Street, they're just doing some amazing things. And a fun fact is that Sam Peak is the second player that I coached at Wesleyan who's in the G League. Harry Rafferty, who just he
went to Berwick, and he's an Exeter guy too. I actually know Harry pretty well. He's at Michigan now, because I grew up in Exeter, and like he used to be at the gym all the time working out with Duncan. I didn't mean to cut you off, but Harry's definitely a good guy. I love Harry.
Yes, Sioux Falls Skyforce we had a big Wesleyan reunion when he was playing in New York City. So he's a grinder, and he's a dear friend of mine too. So as you said, I appreciate you saying that. But just a lot of great people, and and the NESCAC is a very tight knit group, and it's fun to be connected with a lot of guys that I coached against. Like when our paths cross, there's a lot of mutual respect that I have for guys that I coached against in this league, and a lot of my guys, when they graduate, and if they're not in the world of basketball, they're definitely in men's leagues and still staying connected with the game, and those rivalries, the NESCAC rivalries, can sometimes heighten when you graduate, but a lot of times these guys are teammates now, and they're trying to win the leagues in New York City and Boston and other places scattered around the country.
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about Wesleyan basketball, I'm skipping ahead to current day. This past year, you guys finished 13-12, only 4-6 in the NESCAC. So I'm curious, was there anything that you noticed about this year's team that you guys kind of struggle with, that you're trying to combat for the next year and be able to kind of pick it up back to what you know as Wesleyan basketball?
Yeah, so we felt like this year was super successful. Outside of we just wanted to win more games, and it's really important that we define our own success, and we don't let people on the outside define it, because we know what's happening. And we lost a lot of close games this year, and we gained some valuable experience. And this was my youngest team that I've had in quite some time, and I think that the lack of experience hurt us a little bit, but we gained some valuable experience. So, losing gets guys' attention. The guys are really hungry to have a better year, and they're working really hard. But when you look at our top 8 players statistically in scoring, they're all returning, and this year, outside of Nicky Johnson, who's just a tremendous player for us, he was a junior. He has 3 years of experience, but we were starting a sophomore who missed his entire year with a medical red shirt, and we played one of our leading scorer, actually Shane Regan, the leading scorer in the NESCAC. He missed almost all of his freshman year and half of his sophomore year from 2 surgeries. So this was really his first season. So I think you can't skip steps, and you kind of have to learn tough lessons and kind of figure it out. And I think that it certainly didn't feel good losing some close games, but we made a big investment in our future, and we're bringing some new guys in, and some guys who didn't have an opportunity. It's a clean slate. So guys who didn't have opportunity this year or who are back, they're going to have an opportunity. So competition breeds a better product, and we certainly believe in competition. So we're excited about our future. But man, the NESCAC's stacked. There are a lot of good teams out there. So I thought we were really good this year, but unfortunately we weren't good enough in some of the biggest games.
Yeah. This is more just a statement, Rudy. You can take it from here, but what you're saying about having a young team is the two things that I noticed based off like your statistics and record. You guys are 2-9 on the road, so that's big. Like getting those young guys experience playing on the road, those long bus rides, and a tense crowd in the NESCAC, and also you have 9 losses by single digits. So more experience, one less turnover can really just change the game, and that definitely comes with more experience playing at this level.
Yeah, definitely. I agree,
Sure.
100%.
Sure. I wanted to ask you about one of your players, Nicky Johnson. He's pretty much been playing like since he was a freshman. He kind of took over once. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but is it Antoine? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Anton Walker. Yeah,
Anton. When he got injured, like Nicky kind of took over, and he was playing very well for Wesleyan that year. And then now he's going into, I think, his senior year. So what has been like the development that you've seen from him just as a player, but also a leader in the locker room now?
Yeah, Nicky is he's a great leader. He's the youngest of 4 boys in his family. He has great parents and he has great mentors. But fun fact is that all his 3 older brothers all played Division I football. He's the only hooper in the family, and but he's had great mentors and Nicky's a very special person. So he'll be approaching his senior year. He's already scored 1,000 points. He's already the all-time leading assist man in Wesleyan men's basketball history, and he's also the leader in steals in the history of the program. So he's had a remarkable career, and I think he might be 8th in the country in assists this year, and we didn't shoot the ball particularly well, so I think that big things are ahead for Nicky, and it's been really fun coaching him, and Sam Peak mentored him. We had a player named Jordan James who he could have played overseas if he wanted to. He is a tremendous player, and he's in the world of finance, and he's doing really well for himself. And Anton Walker was a great mentor. Anton was 1,000-point scorer for us, and when he went down, we were really nervous. But Nicky came, stepped up and played really well. But and I'm hoping that Nicky, like when we're younger next year and Nicky's a senior, like what those seniors did for Nicky is that they took a lot of pressure off Nicky. Like I think the key when you're playing younger guys is you have great older guys around him. So younger guys can help you win, but the older guys can take some pressure off. Like you're never gonna, like when Nicky was a freshman, we're never gonna lose because of Nicky Johnson, because guys like Sam Peak and Jordan James and Anton Walker and those guys, he was helping us win. And now the torch has been passed, and he's a worker. He's in the gym all the time, and I think he's going to have a great year. And he, even this year, he took a lot of weight on his shoulders, almost too much, just because he's trying to relieve. He knows how it is to be inexperienced, and but he just didn't have a lot of upper class guys around him with experience like Sam Peak did.
Yeah. So one thing I'm wondering about. Obviously, basketball has changed over the last 10 or 15 years or so. The game has kind of evolved to more fast-paced, a lot of threes being put up. And I'm just wondering, like, how much does your coaching philosophy, or sets vary from year to year?
They do change. I think we have some core principles that we'll keep, but we like to change, and we like to. When our players play a lot of pickup in the spring, and they know, like, we like to play freely in space, but we do have some sets, and we want them hopefully playing with our principles, but we also like them tinkering with the games. We got guys that love basketball, and if a guy in the off season come in the fall, they're like, hey coach, like, how about we consider doing this year or do that this year? I obviously make the final decisions, but I love for them to have some input, like, hey, how you want to play. And I think one of the biggest changes is how I practice. This was before COVID, but certainly during COVID, we practiced the whole year, and we didn't even have 10 guys, and we were doing a lot of drills. And I think during COVID, a lot of people were doing drills. And when we came back, I was like, man, we've been doing so many drills. Like, these guys haven't played 5-on-5. Let's just play. And we were like, teach while we play. And And looking back, I think that's been really beneficial. We just play 5-on-5 a lot more in practice than we ever did.
Mm.
And that's been a big change. I think it's been a change for the better.
One thing I'm also wondering about, you obviously have players that come in, like new players that come in year to year with different play styles. How do you adjust the offense, like with the different play styles that are not coming into Wesleyan?
Well, I think everybody wants to run and play fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think no matter what your play style is, like I don't like even big guys, and I listened to you guys talk with Alex Sobel, and I just thought of his name because he's my son Joey's roommate at Sacred Heart, and he's arguably the best center to play in the NESCAC. He's so good, but and I'm really familiar with his game, but he even thrives in early offense and playing fast, but because he wants the ball, because you know he can really move. He's athletic, certainly very athletic for his size. But like if you can get down early and you can get the ball, if you can get to your spots before the defense is set, like there's a huge advance in it. So I think everybody wants to play faster, even if you're if you're big and you're trailing the play and you can get into a drag and you can get to an advantage before the defense is set and get the dominoes falling. And players like that. And I think players and if you're playing really fast, then your drills are going to complement your style of play, and then I think that players will have more fun doing that. And the reality is all players are into winning, but players are into scoring. And if you're playing fast, the more points you're scoring. Like we led the league in scoring this year, and I just think there's more opportunities that, like, I think I understand that as a former basketball player, is that as much as everybody loves to play defense, people like you just have a little extra skip in your step when that ball is going through the basket. So, but we do change. We do change. I think defensively you have to change too, because sometimes you might, in the course of a game, you have to protect someone who might be in foul trouble, or certain guys who can do things offensively, but they might have limitations defensively. You have to have some schemes to, and going back to Alex Sobel, when he was a senior at Middlebury and we beat them, I mean, we had 4 different things we were going to do to stop him. A double team in the post, 4, and then we practiced it all week because he was just that good. We couldn't guard him one-on-one. Yeah. So we can change in game to game, and I have guys that are really into it, and they can pick up concepts pretty easily. So it's fun for me. I'm a I get a little bored if I keep doing the same thing, so I like to tinker, maybe even to a fault, just because it might be new to the guys in the program, but it's not new to me. So I like to be on the cutting edge. And going back to Greg St. Jean during that COVID year, like he was with the Lakers, he was sending me cut-ups of the concepts they have in the fast breaks and the roles and the language they have. And I'm looking. I already have a list of coaches that I'm going to be Xing and Oing and talking with, this offseason to try to just get 1 inch better, and that's fun for me, and I think it's fun for other coaches to talk about that stuff too. As coaches, that's what we do in the off season, particularly D3 guys who aren't, don't have the guys for a summer session.
Yeah. One thing I'm kind of curious about, you mentioned how for Sobel you had 4 different coverages to double him, and that takes a lot of commitment from those guys to really dial in on like the film, knowing when to do the certain double team or how they're going to do it. And, you're coaching at a NESCAC school where they got to focus on academics as well. So as a coach, how are you trying to balance or allow them to still be at the top of their academics, but also lock in on the basketball game as well?
Yeah, it's not just a cliche, but it's real. It's academics first. So that there's certain windows that, you come in and we're super efficient and we have 2 hours and the guys are on the move when, because we share the facility with the women's basketball team and our guys have TA sessions. They got to hustle to go get food, but we really take advantage during the breaks. We're blessed with a very long winter break at Wesleyan. So that's really becomes a great time where we can bring guys back for film. We get extra shots up, and and at Wesleyan, the Wesleyan student I think every Wesleyan student is deeply involved in their extracurricular activities. And for basketball guys, that extracurricular is basketball, and they're going to put a lot of time into it outside of practice and still get their academics done. But we have a vibrant arts community at Wesleyan, and if you're a theater major, you're not limited to just spending a certain amount of hours, getting ready for your production or your senior thesis, and you mentioned Anton Walker. He was a double major. He's really into music. He produces his own music, and he's working in the music industry right now. But he was also an economics major, so he's a double major. But he was really into basketball too. I tell all my guys, you have 168 hours in a week, and you want to know where your priorities lie and where your interests lie and what your goals are. Do a little time inventory of how you're spending your time. And, and if basketball is really important to you, you're going to find time to put the time into it. The best part about, I think, the Division III model is you can do that and still have a life, because you're doing it on your own terms when you want to do it. You're not doing it because Coach Reilly's telling you to do it.
So you've obviously been in basketball for a long time now, and you have a storied career at Bates, Wesleyan, stops in different places in New England. I think a lot of, young coaches out there, or just, players in general, would want to hear just your biggest piece of advice. If it's for coaches, like, what advice would you give them, like, getting into the coaching business? And if it's players, like, what advice would you give them, like, to a freshman, let's say, heading into their first year of college, not really knowing what to expect?
I'll start with a player, and I just think it's important that you don't skip steps. And I think that it can get real emotional if you don't really take a step back and a deep breath. And so even when I'm talking about my own son's college career, it's like you evaluate, if you really get into it and you scrutinize every practice and every game, it gets to be overbearing. Like, evaluate it at the end of the season. Like, things can change. They always change. So I would say for younger players to be patient and control the controllables, control what you can control, and evaluate it at the end. Because if you're evaluating from day to day, they're for everybody, no matter what your role is on a team, there are great moments and there are some not great moments. And there's some good days and there's some bad days. There's days you're feeling great, and there's always adversity. And you grow the most during the adversity. But I think we live in a society that we're all so comfortable, and no one really likes to be uncomfortable and doesn't like that adversity. So I would say embrace it and be patient. The second part of your question was to young coaches. I just think that you to be a sponge, and there's no coach that is where they are today that people haven't helped them. Mm. And I think that all coaches really want to help young people pursue their dreams and are willing to help. So my advice is never hesitate to reach out and to ask for advice and just expand your network. It's super competitive. I was just having a conversation yesterday with someone about breaking into the business. And I think if you really want to be in the coaching business, it's like you can't chase the money right away. You gotta chase the experience and the network, and you kind of have to survive those first couple of lean years where to kind of sacrifice. Because I think a lot of people might give it a year or two and then move on, but you gotta be persistent, and you have to be a little lucky. You gotta catch a break, and you gotta make your own luck. And the other thing that I say this to all my assistant coaches, is that if you really dedicated to be a coach, I would start a coaching journal. Mm-hmm. So someone gave me, I can't even remember who gave me that advice, but when I became a head coach, I bought a journal, and I still have that journal, and I'm still adding to it. And if you ask me, like, hey, what were you thinking at the end of being 3-21, that first year at Bates? Well, I can go back and I can look at my notes, and it's not like I'm not writing paragraphs. I'm writing bullet points, and I'll pick like 4 or 5 times in every season to just write some notes of what I'm thinking. And it's fun to see how things don't change and the same things that are important remain important today. But it's also fun to see that there are a lot of things that do change and that your perspective changes, about as a young coach versus the perspectives you have as an older coach who's more experienced. So I think I believe in journaling in general, not even outside of basketball, just to get your thoughts down and I do that in another space too, whether it's like my spiritual life or just being a dad and a husband and or even if you want to stay, like I want to coach a long time, and part of me coaching a long time is I got to stay in shape. So I want to write down my goals of what I want to do fitness wise and everything. So that's what I would say. And I encourage my players hear that from me, and some of them are doing it. But I think it's something that they'll remember. And when they move on their professional life, I hope they take that with them.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And something that stuck with me is we go through this life and we think that like everything's changing through our early years to our later years, but in reality, it's just like the same when you really think about it. So that's a good insight that you just provided us.
And you guys are young student athletes, and I always tell guys like, hey, like I think every phase of your life is the best. But like being a college athlete is so unique. It's just so unique. And those 4 years in college, and just the energy that's on every college campus, and the desire to learn, and just being exposed to so many things. Like, just be a sponge. Don't waste your time being on video games. And like I know sleep is really important for student athletes for high performance, but like get out there and go to bed tired because you live a full day.
I like that.
I like that. Yeah, OD. But we've been recording for 1 hour and 20 minutes, so let's get into some rapid fire and the starting 5 edition. Let us know when you're ready for rapid fire.
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, so my first rapid fire question that I want to ask you: favorite away gym to play in?
I'm saying Bates College. It's intimate, alumni gym. Place gets loud. That's my favorite. That's my favorite place, and I have some great memories there.
Okay, next question: if you can name 2 or 3 of your funniest players that you've ever coached.
Man, easy. Tim Gallivan, 2015 NESCAC champ, is hilarious. It is as quick-witted as any player that I've ever had. And then I'm going to go. So he was Wesleyan, and then I'm going to go a player who's an AD at Mercer College down in Georgia. Brian Garrity was just a great person, and man, he made me smile for his whole career at Bates. So I'm gonna give you 2. I don't know who a third is, but I think those are the 2. And it was an easy 2.
One thing that I feel like people are scared to ask their actual coach about is how much the coach actually knows about what we're doing off the court or outside of school. So how aware are you of like what Wesleyan parties are like, or who's the craziest at parties at Wesleyan?
Yeah, I know nothing about that. I do talk about being socially responsible, and what I like to tell my guys is that you're supposed to have fun in college, and the expectation is you're not sitting in your dorm room on Friday and Saturday nights. The expectation is that you're going out. Like, you grow a lot in college. You have to learn a lot. You have to learn how to have a blast and have fun, but you have to do it in a socially responsible manner and be respectful of everyone. unfortunately, we live in a world like back when I was in college. If I or anyone in my circle made a mistake, not many, the only people that know about it are the people that you told or the people that were there. But we live in a world now where if you make a mistake, like people in your hometown can find out about it before, your roommate does if you're out on a Friday or Saturday night. So
yeah.
I just think it's really, I want these guys to have a blast. I want them to attack every aspect of their experience at Wesleyan, but do it in a social responsible manner. And any former player who's listening to this is gonna know this quote is that you can choose your actions, but you can't choose your consequences. So make sure you're out there making some good decisions.
I like that. And then last rapid fire question I have to ask. So a lot of the times, players will have their headphones in listening to music while they, before games or while they're working out. Do you have like a routine or song that you always listen to before stepping out onto the floor, or when you're waking up getting ready for the morning? Like, do you have anything like that or no?
No, I don't. But I like music. So I don't use music in practice early in the season, but later in the season we do it. And I think the guys are surprised at the we all pick a couple songs and a song will come on and people are like, wow, this is really cool. And like, whose is this? And I raise my hand. They're like, no way, I didn't know you could do that. So I think I'm going to dive into that more. I think I'm going to have an exclusively Coach Reilly playlist going on. And see. But I think I caught a couple guys by surprise this year.
I got to see that playlist, Coach.
Yeah, same. All right. We're going to skip to the starting 5 edition. So as a coach, you're picking your lineup 1 through 5. And this edition, you've been a part of the NESCAC for plenty of years. So I'm curious, the best scorers you've seen in your NESCAC career. So from Trinity all the way to right now, the best scorers.
All right. So I could go all guys I coached. How about we say that I won't be guys that I coached?
I like that.
So because that'll be unfair because I can't say the guys that I coach. So the best scorers.
And give a position where they played and just like a sentence about why they were so good to you.
All right. Well, there was a player at Trinity named Tyler Roten, and he was a forward. And I don't know offhand how many points he scored, but man, he scored a lot. So he's a very good player. He's from New Jersey, so he's going to be there.
He's going to be your 4.
I would say he'll be a 4. He'll be the 4.
Okay.
I'm going to go. I'm going with Alex Sobel at the 5 because I'm really familiar with his game and he's a great person and so at guard I'm going to go Aaron Toomey. He was a national champion at Amherst and he could really put the ball in the basket.
He's coaching at Hartford now, right?
Yeah, he's at University of Hartford.
Yep.
Great coach, great person. He had a great career. I was so happy to see him graduate. All these guys. I'm gonna go. There was a player at Williams that played for Mike Maker named James Wang, and man, he could really score. So I'm gonna put him. I'll put him off the ball at the 2.
Okay.
So now I need.
You need a 3 right now, last position.
I'm digging. I'm gonna dig deep. Because I want it. Because man, it's 27 years. I'm trying to throw a curveball here. Man, you know what? I'm gonna break it, and I'm gonna go Sam Peake.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sam Peake.
The guys in the G League, but I'm being loyal to him. But does it count if you only played in the NESCAC 1 year? Because it's going to be Duncan Robinson, who's obviously
that's another good pick.
Because he's so I don't know if he counts or not. So
he definitely does.
I'll let you guys decide that one.
No, he's a D3 guy. He's a D3 guy.
That's the roots.
So he's amazing to watch, and him and Harry Rafferty were real close. They played at Exeter together.
That's pretty cool though. That 2 people that were already on, not even D2, featured in that list. So
yeah, that's dope.
Tough. Well, This has been a long time coming. We appreciate all the time and gems that you've spit into us. Definitely going to be looking at Wesleyan to see how you combat a 13 and 12 years. So good luck to you for next year, and we'll be in contact.
Thanks. This was fun. You guys do a great job. And anything I can do to help you guys out, let me know. It's the best part about my job is meeting young people who are striving to do great things. I really enjoy this. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Coach Reilly.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Not Even D2. If you haven't already, make sure to go follow all the socials at Not Even D2. You can catch every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm your host, KJ Allison, and I'll see you next episode.